Good evening, and welcome to another live show. This is your boy Rolando and XY Spark. We hope that you guys have been enjoying a wonderful weekend. It's a Saturday evening, and normally I know some of us we might have plans. We're still waiting for this pandemic to blow over. We have survived an entire year already. Can you believe it? And we just continue to be optimistic that things will get back to as close to normal as is possible. A lot of vaccines have been going out now. A lot of persons are receiving their vaccines. I'm waiting in line for my opportunity to get mine as well and my family so that we too can start making some free passage as we continue. There are still a lot of guidelines in place that I want to encourage all of us to continue to seek to follow, because in the end we can't get careless, we can't give in, we can't allow this virus to take over. We have got to push back and do our part so that we can start living our lives again. How is it going, guys? How have you been feeling? I hope if you're on your way to work, I hope you have a safe passage. If you're on your way home or you just got home, I hope you had a good day and you're about to hit the sack there to go for another day. Or this may be your first day off. I don't know. Maybe you don't work on a shift. You work on Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Kudos to you. Some of us don't have that luxury. And so we hope that whatever it is that you've been doing, we just hope that you'll continue. Today, believe it or not, it's the first day of spring officially. Right now on the outside, the weather network is reporting that we do have some flurries going down. For how long, not sure, but a lot of the white stuff that was on the ground has melted, and we are slowly looking forward to making that transition. By way of announcement, just wanted to remind you that tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m., we're going to be having a special guest who's going to be coming on and speaking to us about mental wellness and how we can acquire that mind power to go through. We're going to have a special guest. Believe it or not, it's also someone that I went to school with. So I've known him now for maybe over 2 decades. Yes, I'm that young. I've known him over 2 decades. And so he's coming to be on our program tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. So wherever you are around the world, you may be in on Pacific time, Eastern time, you may be down under, you may be ahead, you may be behind. I know that much I can tell you that 2 p.m. for me is Mountain Standard Time or MST. If you are located a little farther west from where my location is, that's going to be 1 p.m. your time, and I think that's Pacific. If you're a little farther east from where I am, depending on how far east, you can be anywhere between 2 to 3, and even some places 3.5 hours ahead of me. So if you're on Eastern time, it's going to be 4 p.m. Your time, and if you're a little bit farther, it could be as much as 5 p.m. For those listeners that we have that's tuning in different parts of the world, I'm sorry I don't have. Maybe I need to get one of those clocks here or get different time zones from different places around the world so I can tell you specifically what time it's going to be for you. If you're in the United Kingdom, for example, because I know I do have some listeners in the UK, I think the last time I checked, you were 8 hours ahead of me. So if it's 2 p.m. here, it's going to be around about 10 p.m. for you. And that's the best I can do, guys. I'll try to do my homework next time and see if I can give you specifically what time it's going to be in your area. We want to continue to say a great thank you for all the support that you continue to give us. We also wanted to continue to remind you that please do not hold yourself back if you're so impressed to become a sponsor or a patron of XY Spark. We have been doing a lot of work and you have been very supportive. You have been downloading what we have been producing. You have been liking, you've been subscribing. I just want to tell all the men and even the ladies who have been listening to XY Spark, Please continue to share the work that we're doing so that we can continue to promote healthy masculinity, empower more men, and by way we have more enriching relationships. We have men who are more committed and more connected. We have families that are happier, and will continue to support and grow together as we go beyond the 21st century and continue to enjoy the luxuries of what it means to be a healthy masculine. So this evening is no exception. We want to continue to do another thought-provoking presentation for you. Our topic this evening is basically what are the characteristics of shame and ways to overcome it. What are the characteristics of shame and ways to overcome it? We do hope that you'll stay with us as we go through our presentation this evening. In the meantime, don't you go away. We will be right back.
Grief and loss, trauma, mental health, alcohol and drug use, gender roles, anger management, self-esteem, sexual abuse, domestic violence, and the pressures of societal norms are real-life issues that affect men. Join Rolando, psychotherapist, author, life coach, and motivational speaker that has dedicated his profession to working with men to find a healthier alternative to cope and handle these stressors. Rolando believes that men are lacking in social, psychological, emotional, and spiritual support that is necessary for a lifestyle that promotes healthy masculinity. We invite you to join us on XY Spark, where we discuss issues that men face. At XY Spark, we believe the key for happier families is restoring healthy masculinity.
Welcome back and thank you for being with us here. This is your boy Rolando. For those who are joining us for the very first time, we thank you for choosing XY Spark as your place of listenership. For those who continue to listen to us over and over again, we appreciate you, we love you, and we thank you for being a part of the XY Spark family. This evening, we're going to be having another thought provoking presentation. We do hope that you will take your time to process some of the things that we will be saying this evening. And please feel free to comment, to like. You can email us at Hyman at xyspark.info. That's Hyman at xyspark.info. Or you can just go on our website, contactxyspark.com, and send us an email, and we always try to respond to you as soon as we can. And so this evening, we want to talk about shame and what are the characteristics of shame and the ways to overcome it. Shame, by definition, is said to be the uncomfortable or painful feeling that we experience when we realize that a part of us is defective, bad, incomplete, rotten, phony, inadequate, or a failure. End quote. Let me read that for you again. And I quote, it says here, shame is the uncomfortable or painful feeling that we experience when we realize that a part of us is defective, bad, incomplete, rotten, phony, inadequate, or a failure. And so, as you listen to this definition, have you ever been in a space where you feel any way like what was just described? Where you were feeling a bit defective? Where you were feeling like, hey, I'm just a bad person? Or I'm so incomplete? Or you may say, hey, I feel like I'm just too phony. I'm rotten. I feel inadequate. I feel like such a failure. May I bring to your attention that these are some of the characteristics that accompanies shame. And so I want us to talk this evening about three or four areas of three or four places where shame can easily be identified. The first thing that we want to recognize is that shame is universal to being human. So, every one of us, whether we are willing to accept it or not, we are going to have some degree of shame. We are going to have some degree of shame. And what we have got to do is we have got to take the time to seek to reflect and recognize what area in our lives is shame playing a part. What area of our lives do we need to work on to break away from this hook, from this burden, from this chain that shame has over our lives? So we want to recognize that shame is something that's universal. None of us are immune to being impacted by shame. Rolando is not immune to being impacted by shame. You out there listening, you may be thinking I'm perfect. Well, hint, hint, you are not immune to being impacted by shame. Shame is universal, and we want to recognize that. We want to recognize that if we do not work through it, and then let go of it, shame tends to accumulate and burden us more and more until we become its victim. Let me reiterate that for you in case you missed it. It says, if we do not work through it and then let go of it, shame tends to accumulate and burden us more and more until we become its victim. So we want to start recognizing and working through the shame. And for some of us, there's a pride that goes with it. There's denial that goes with it, to the point where we are not opening ourselves up enough to acknowledge the impact that the shame has had or is having now on our lives. And if we were to be honest with ourselves and to recognize the reality, we would become more mindful that, hey, maybe I'm doing this thing the way I'm doing it because there is some shame. Here's big point number two about shame. Are you ready? Big point number two about shame is this: shame, shame makes us believe that others can see through us, through our facade, and into our defectiveness. So shame makes us feel that people are talking about us. And sometimes you'll hear people make statements like that, like, what's their problem? Why are they staring at me? Why are they looking at me this way? If we're living our lives like that, it's because we are struggling with shame. It's because we feel that somehow people know something about us. So if someone look at us, we're on the defensive. If somebody says something to us, we're ready to destroy them, to bite their heads off, to get into a kerfuffle because of shame. We need to acknowledge and recognize that if we're going to grow and if we're going to heal, we have got to deal with those shame. So the big point about shame is that shame makes us believe that others can see through us. So shame brings us into a place where there's a false sense of belief. Shame pushes us into a space where we are living our lives without proof. We're living our lives based on a preconceived notion. So shame is that monster. It keeps us into this defective mode, this space. Here's the next thing about shame. Shame feels hopeless. There's so many persons who live their lives in this mindset. There's hopelessness. There's no joy. There's no drive. There's no motivation. There's no will to do. Shame just keeps us in that space where we are constantly hopeless, helpless. We're not driven. We're not motivated. We're not going anywhere. We don't have any dreams. We don't have any desires. We don't have any spark. We are not optimistic. We are hopeless. And if this is how we are living our lives, it's a sign that shame has taken up residence in our beings. We want to remember that shame will make us feel isolated. Shame will make us feel lonely. Shame will bring us into a place where we are constantly experiencing that painful feeling, but we're not doing anything about it. So we want to recognize when shame is taking over our psychological, emotional beings. We want to remember this, that what is more is when I'm afraid to tell about my shame, because I feel that if I do, people will think, or people will judge me, or people will look at me differently. Okay, we want to find, a safe space where we can talk about that shame. Remember, it is said, not only do I keep shame to myself, but often I block it out or pretend that it is not there. We don't want to get to that place where we're blocking out or we're pretending that nothing, that hey, there's nothing there, I'm fine. Sometimes, we like to say to ourselves, oh, I'm fine. Oh, it's okay. But it's not okay. You know that you're not fine. You need to connect with the right source and address that shame, because it's destroying you. It's destroying me. It's destructive to our own personal growth and to our relationship dynamic, whether it is personal or professional. Shame is a killer. And so, if you are struggling with shame, and if you can identify that there's something going on in my life that I need to work on, I would say get into that mind frame and start chipping away at ways to overcome that shame, because shame is destructive. Here's the next thing about shame. I may even try to disguise my shame. And if it were some other feeling or action, I would project that on to other people. So sometimes we behave the way we do, and sometimes we are projecting some of our own shame and some of our own insecurities onto other people. We want to become more mindful about what we need to do in order to overcome our own shame. So now let's talk about some of the fruits of shame. Some of the things that when they happen or when we're doing them, it is because there is some shame just lurking in the background. Big point number one is this: if you are someone who you display anger more often than normal, it's because there is some shame that you have not addressed. If you are someone who finds it easy to be resentful, you're holding on to resentment, it's because there is some shame that has not been addressed. If you are someone who you get into a rage quite easily, if you're that guy, if you're that girl, whoever you are, if you're listening to this podcast and you're someone who you get into that rage sometimes without even knowing why, or you feel that you are entitled to, and you're supposed to get into a rage, or you get into a rage more than normal, it's because there is some shame that's been unaddressed. If you're someone who gets in that place where you're constantly blaming, you're blaming someone, is because of what somebody did, and if someone didn't do it, then everything would be okay. Then you need to take that step back and start asking yourself, could it be that I have some shame that I need to address? If you're someone who is in that place where you feel there's contempt, there is some shame. If you're a person who you're there and you're always in attack mode, you're in hypersensitivity, you're always ready to get into a conflict or get into something with someone, then it's a sign that there is some shame. If you feel that you must always be in control, and there's so many persons who, this is it, I have to be in control. If I am not in control, then I want to tell you that there's something going on that's connected to shame. Here's one that many persons might have not known that's connected to shame. If you're someone who believes in perfectionism, you're not giving yourself any room to be human. You feel like you should never make a mistake. If you do, you beat yourself up for months, for weeks, for years. Then I need you to check that, because that's a sign that you're struggling with some shame. If you're someone who there's a lot of neglect or withdrawal that you find that you do sometimes, it's because there is some shame that you have been struggling with that needs to be addressed. If you're someone who there's an abandonment piece there that's going on with you, there's some abandonment where you're in that space where you ruminate on that, then there is some shame. If you're feeling that way, if there's some disappointment that's going on, then there is some shame. You feel like you're disappointed with yourself, you're always blaming yourself, there's some shame. And if you are someone who you're involved in compulsive behavior, very compulsive behavior, you're involved in things like pornography, you're involved in a lot of different partners, and you're not able to commit in any relationship or maintain that, then there is some shame that going with that, and you need to work on that so that you can recover. So I'm saying that these are some of the characteristics, these are some of the fruits that go with shame. And so if you are struggling in that area, and if you can identify with any of these pieces, I would say it's so important for you to reach forward and get some support to deal with that shame. When you and I are in that place, when you feel or you act out any of these disguises, it serves a useful purpose so that you can recognize that your codependent or your false self is acting as a defense against the feeling of shame. So that all of those traits that we talked about sometimes is just that false self that is sort of pushing up because there is some shame. So how do we overcome the shame? How do we get away from it? It says, no matter how well I may defend myself and others against it, my shame will not go away unless I learn what it is, experience it, and share it with safe and supportive persons. Did you catch that? I don't want you to miss it. It says, unless I learn what it is. So you and I need to really be brutally honest with ourselves and identify what is that thing that is causing me to display some of these traits that are accompanied with shame. And identifying that trait is going to help you now to move it now from identifying it to experiencing it, and then you're going to find a safe space to share it with a safe, supportive person. I'm saying that we want to start working on ways to get rid of shame. So where does shame come from? Where does shame come from? Or shame seems to come from what we do with the negative messages that we have received, the negative affirmations. Because sometimes we don't recognize, or we might have, but we have not recognized how those things has influenced us today as adults. Those negative comments that were made, those negative affirmations that came from those in whom we trusted, from those who were our caregivers, from those who were in our friendship circles. For many of us, we were bullied a lot at school, and there were several things that was said to us. And even now, as we're adults, some of those things that were said to us when we were bullied, we still are following through with that belief. The psychology that has impacted us, it has impacted our self-esteem, it has impacted the way we think, it has impacted our outlook on the world. And so that shame has been with us now for many, many years. What our parents have said to us, what clergy, what a teacher. I have a good buddy of mine who shared his story that his teacher, yes, believe it or not, many teachers are guilty of shaming students in the classroom, and they think they were doing that student good. This guy, he shared his story, and he was a guest here on my podcast. Okay, but he shared his story how his teacher told him that he's never going to come out to nothing good. And today, when he shares his story, he's doing well. He's a committed, connected family man, doing well for himself. And he shared that story just to say that sometimes teacher and clergy can put things in our minds that brings us to a place of shame. And we want to challenge those areas, and we want to break away from that so that we can become better. We can become the best version of ourselves. Because these messages basically tell us that we are somehow not all right. We're not okay. We're not good. Our feelings and our needs are not important. And so we get into that place, and over we hear these messages. And the more we hear these messages, is the more they sink deeper into our emotional, psychological well-beings. And it's the more hurt, the more trauma, the more grief, the more our self-esteem is destroyed. And so we want to recognize those shame that was planted, those seeds of shame that were planted in our psychological, emotional soils, and we want to start confronting them and working to get rid of them. I want us to talk a little bit now about some of the negative rules and some of the negative messages that has planted or sown the seed of shame. Some of the negative rules were don't express your feelings. So many men now, so many men and women alike, they were forbidden to express their feelings. And so even now, there are men who are in relationships and their partners don't talk with them about emotional things. There are women who are with men, and I'm appealing now to the men who are listening to XY Spark. If you find that you have not been able to talk about those feelings and talk about those emotions, it's now time for you to grow and to let go of that shame so that you can have a healthy relationship. We're talking about becoming the best version of yourself and practicing healthy masculinity. Here are some other negative rules. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. That's a negative rule because you see, we will get angry. When anger becomes dangerous is when you're hurting ourselves or hurting somebody else. But we need to be able to make the separation, because there's aggression and there's assertiveness. So yes, things are going to happen to get us angry, but is how we respond to that thing that triggers our anger that's going to make us who we are, because anger is a necessary emotion. It's just that it should not be an emotion that is destructive to the point where we're harming ourselves, harming somebody else, or even destroying property. Here's another negative rule: don't get upset, don't cry. Isn't that a popular one? Don't cry. Why are you crying? What about, hey, you know what? It's okay to cry because you're human. All right? So give yourself some room to be human and express those emotions. Do as I say, not as I do. I grew up in that era. My dad told me that so many times. Bless his heart. Okay? But I grew up and I recognize that that's a negative rule. Be good, nice, perfect. Be perfect. Now, so many persons, they are saying that even now, I need it to be perfect. It has to be perfect. Says who? That is a negative rule. Avoid conflict, it says, or avoid dealing with conflict. When we don't deal with conflict, you know the result. I don't have to talk about that for a lot. You know what the result is. We need to learn how to deal with conflict and deal with it in a mature, respectful way. And that way, we will grow and we'll become better and we will move into a different realm. It says, don't think or talk, just follow directions. It's negative rule. Do well in school no matter what. Negative rule. Don't ask questions. Negative rule. Don't betray the family. Another negative rule. Don't discuss the family with outsiders. Keep the family secrets. Be seen and not heard. No backtalk. Don't contradict. Always look good. I'm always right and you're always wrong. Always be in control. Focus on the alcoholic's drinking or troubled person's behavior. Drinking, it says, or other troubled behavior is not the cause of our problems. That's people who are saying, hey, yeah, I'm drinking, but that's not the problem. Always maintain the status quo. Everyone in the family must be an enabler of dysfunction. All these are negative rules. Here are some negative messages. Shame on you. You're not good enough. I wish I'd never had you. And if you're listening to the podcast and you heard this, I want to take this opportunity to say to you, it is not true. I want to say to you, you are good enough. I want to say to you, you were born for a purpose. So if you were told, I wish I never had you, well, too bad you're here. And because you're here, I want to speak life into you and say to you, go forth and conquer and be the best that you can be. Your needs are not all right with me. Hurry up and grow up. You can't grow faster than your time. Okay? I want to encourage you that you grew up at the right pace and you grew up at the right time. Okay? Be dependent. That's not true. You're smart enough. Be independent. Be a man. I'm not sure what that means, but you were born a male and that's who you are and that's what you are. So no one needs to seek to discredit your manhood. You are a man and you've always been a man. Big boys don't cry. Whether you're a big boy or a little boy, boys, it's okay for you to express emotion. Big boys cry, little boys cry, older men cry, younger men cry. It's okay. You are a human. Act like a nice person, act like a nice boy, act like a nice man. You don't feel that way. Yes, you do. Your feelings are not playing tricks on you. You're human, you have feelings, and it's okay. All right? It says, don't be like that. You're so stupid or you're so bad. Well, guess what? That's not true. You are smart enough. You are bold enough. You're strong enough. You're not stupid. I'm once again speaking life into you. You caused it. No, you didn't. It takes two to tango. All right. And sometimes it's because these persons were saying that to you. Once again, they're projecting their own shame onto you. So I want you to shake that off right now and tell yourself, I am no longer going to embrace my mom's shame, my dad's shame, my aunt's shame, my uncle's shame, my coach's shame, my clergy's shame, my sibling's shame. I am no longer going to own their shame. I'm going to be the best version of me. You owe it to us. No, of course we love you. Okay. I'm sacrificing myself for you. Well, if you're my parent or if you're my caregiver, guess what? You're not sacrificing anything. You brought me here, so you have responsibility to take care of what my needs are until I can come independent enough to no longer need you to take care of my needs. How can you do this to me? We won't love you if you negative messages. You'll never accomplish anything. Negative messages. It didn't really hurt. Negative messages. You're so selfish. Negative messages. And I want to pause here to say to you this evening that you are not responsible for what they did or for what they said or for what happened. They are not honest enough and bold enough to step up and take ownership, so they are blaming you. You are a champion, and that's what you're going to continue to be. Remember, you're special, you're great. There's greatness in you, there's a spark in you. You have the skill, and you have the zeal, and you have the drive to do it. Guys, I just want to say to you that I'm extremely happy and excited that you decided to join us here on XY Spark this evening. If you have any questions, please go ahead and write it in our question box. If not, we continue to encourage you to join us for our live podcast every Saturday evening at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time or 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 7 p.m. Pacific. We also have our live podcast on Wednesday evenings at 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time or 11 p.m. Pacific, rather Eastern Time, and 8 p.m. Pacific Time. We are so glad that you decided to join us. And wherever you are around the world, we just want to say to you, thank you for being a part of XY Spark conversation this evening. In the meantime, continue to like, share. You can contact us at Hyman at xyspark.info. That's Harry, Yankee, Man, Alpha, and Night at xyspark.info. You can check out our website at contactxyspark.com and you'll see some more of the programs that we do. You can like and share, you can subscribe, you can find us on Facebook at xyspark, Instagram, and TikTok as well, and Twitter, and continue to like and follow us. We appreciate you. And we just want to say, in the meantime, this is your boy Rolando on XY Spark. Please join us again for another one of our lively discussions as we continue to promote healthy masculinity.
Please join Rolando next time on XY Spark as he engages us in practical discussions that promotes healthy masculinity and challenge men to live extraordinary lives. At XY Spark, we believe the key for happier families is restoring healthy masculinity.